And you're going to start with about like 1 to 1.5 feet of space between your toes and the wall. And then you're going to bend your knees initially, bend forward, put your hands on the floor. Yep. And then you're going to drop your head and look back behind you. I know some of you already know this pose, it's familiar. And then I'm going to have Michelle actually step in closer. The more flexible you are, the closer you can actually get your feet to the wall. Not that close, back up. So 1 foot to 1.5. Now you're going to bend your knees, lift your heels. Nope, hands on the floor, lift the heels. And then while keeping the knees more bent, bend, you're going to place your ribs on the wall so that you're already leaning back against the wall so that you don't have to think of balancing. And then once you get there, you might just be able to take your hands off and just put your palms next to your legs with the feet facing up. And then hold on, keep the heels up. So the first thing, there's going to be a little stepwise process you go through. Get yourself warmed up slowly by first trying to get the legs straight. So the first part is how straight you can get your knees. So go ahead. And then keep the heels up. So once you can get your knees straight, then you can actually start to put the heels back down on the floor. And if you can get to this point, then of course at the very last, you're going to lift your toes up, but still keep your ribs on the wall. And nothing to do here with the arms. Your head might be close to the ground, but because you're leaning against the wall, you're not in any danger of falling on the head. So get yourself set up in that, and we'll spend about a minute there to just kind of indoctrinate the lovely hamstrings into our day today. And some of our practices, we start sitting down. We start with some more traditionally physically still postures. And today there's a little bit more dynamism in this pose. So even though there's stillness, there's not like necessarily a prevalence of constant movement and management of your limbs. There's still a little bit more action than just simply being able to sit. So when you relax your body into the wall, close your eyes, and then just kind of start to capture what it is that you're feeling in your legs. And of course, that's going to be a lot that you're feeling right here in the hamstrings. So like I said, those first two steps is you keep the heels up and you keep the knees bent, and you unravel those eventually as time goes on and as your capacity in the body to adapt to it grows and develops. So closing the eyes, feeling just a little bit more reversed, a little bit more retracted, you could say, in your attention. Start to put more gasoline, fuel, into your quadriceps so that your knees begin to at least gesture towards straightening. And they might only move an increment, which is still great. And you'll notice that as the challenge on the legs accumulates, the stretching feeling in your hamstrings also accumulates. And if by now you've got your knees straight, then start to reach your heels towards the floor. And then if your heels have actually gotten to the ground, and you don't need a lot of pressure underneath the heels, but if they're at least making some contact, reinforce that by lifting your toes from the front, which is the exact opposite end of what it takes to get the heels down, which is when you're lifting the toes, you're creating action on the front of your legs, which helps you lengthen the back of the legs, and in this case specifically, the back of the lower leg compartment. And for maybe another 5 breaths, see how well your exhale continues to be fleshed out, because our exhale is where we really start to coordinate our parasympathetic nervous system into the dynamic nature of a physical yoga practice, a dynamic yoga practice. Good. Maybe this last out breath, make sure that it's complete and efficient. And then to come out, you can bend your knees again. To come out, put your hands on the floor, and you can either walk your hands right up the wall or just push yourself away from the ground and then slowly stand up. And then once you're standing, don't move too much. Close your eyes right away. Let your shoulders fall down off the ears. And just see if you can take an inventory of your body, having just done this long more restorative nature forward bend, and what the resultant state is in the body. And by the body, of course, we also mean the mind, the feelings. Then when you're ready, come back up to the top of your mat, and we'll see how our first sun salutation proceeds with having that right in our history. So with your feet, you can keep them together, you can keep them slightly apart. Reach your arms right down next to you, so it's as if you're trying to get your fingertips as close to the ground as possible, keeping the arms and the legs straight. So that really starts to pull the top of the shoulders off the ears and helps to mobilize a little bit more of your levator scap muscle, the upper trap muscle, which can help to really unburden the neck from its constant tensions. So taking a full exhale again. On the inhale, lift your arms up, keep the toes elevated. And as you exhale, fold forward with your toes completely fanned and flared. And then on your next inhale, lengthen forward. Now stay in this half lift for 5 breaths, which we usually don't hold. And half lift is one of these poses that is very transitionary. Like we just stop by it for a moment, not even full of full breath, right? For a half a breath for one inhale. And we just move on like, what's the next thing? So when you set yourself up, you can either keep your hands on the floor or you can place your hands on your shins. And just to show what the shin variation looks like, it's pretty simple, which allows you, if you don't have the flexibility yet in the hamstrings, to bring the hands higher on the shins so that you don't have to flex forward as far in the hips. But wherever your hands are, on the floor or on the shins, reach your chest forward, close your eyes, and think back to the feelings, just the general like the thrust of sensations that are a part of cobra pose. So see if you can resurrect those sensations and those actions. So when you're inhaling, you're really making it a point to catapult your chest forward away from the body and your sitting bones back it up. As far as the torso is concerned, it's more of a back bend. Let's take one more big breath in like this. And then as you exhale, fold back down onto the legs. On the next inhale, half lift again. And now see if you can keep the trace of that half lift in the upper body as you plant your palms on the floor, bend your knees if necessary, and step back to high plank. None other than our famous high plank. Keep your hands and your fingers well spread. And right now, try to get more contact in the index and middle finger bases, which are going to be supported by extra contraction in the fingertips. Get a little bit more squeeze of your thumb tips into the ground, keeping the thighs engaged, lift your upper back off the ground. And then now on the next exhale, watching the action on the front of your thighs, your quads, lower down to low plank. If you need to lower down to the floor, that's fine too. And then inhale, good, slide forward to upward dog, not too harsh at first. And exhale, use your belly button retracting technique to come back to downward dog. There we go. And then assembling your hands and assembling your feet with all of the good habits that you guys have been learning over time. The rudimentary elements of which are feet no closer to each other than hips width apart. And you can always see what that means if you just see how wide, how far the outer edges of your feet are from each other. And you trace those lines right up the side of your legs into the hips, right? And if the space between the outer blades of the feet is more narrow than the space between your hips, which you can see, take a wider stance. There's almost no limit to how wide you can go, but there's a limit on how narrow you can stand. And that both takes care of structural elements in the hips and how they're designed to work in the context of hip flexion, but it also starts to really pinpoint the stretch response that we want to elicit out of the hamstrings. On the next inhale, lift the heels up. Exhale, bend your knees, walk or step or hop forward. Good. Inhale, lift and flare and fan your lovely toes. Exhale, fold forward, keep your quads lit up. On your next inhale, slamming your feet into the ground in a way, slowly come up to stand with your arms reaching up at the very tip top. Yay, exhale, arms down. And we continue. Heels heavy, inhale, arms up. The heavier the heels, the lighter the toes, or the lighter the toes, the heavier the heels. Exhale, fold forward. Now transfer as you fold the weight from the heels more to the front of your feet. And then inhale, lengthen halfway, and reinstate that same shape you had before. Exhale, plant your palms. Step back to high plank, and right away you can just transfer this into your low plank. Make sure you get to the bottom of the exhale there. Inhaling to upward dog, and exhaling back to downward dog. Good. So when you get back there, getting your feet and your legs set up in the same position as the previous set. Now feel into the hands, and it's easy to just look at the hands and say, well, okay, so this hand needs to be a little bit further, maybe these fingers need to be a little bit more spread, but that's kind of like the path of least resistance. I want you to try to understand what the placement is of your arms from more of a proprioceptive position. So that means, can you actually feel the nuanced alignment of your hands and your arms without your eyes having confirmed what's actually going on? Friday energizing vinyasa. You know, the energy center in the iconography of yoga's tradition is the chakra associated with the abdomen, the Manipura chakra, which is interestingly enough the color yellow, which seems to be how Michelle and I coordinated our shirts today. So you really know it's going to be an energizing vinyasa when the color of the day seems to be the color of that chakra. Next inhale, lift your heels up. Exhale, bend the knees, walk, step, or hop forward. Lovely. Inhale, lengthen, but keep the toes lifted so the quads are lifted. And exhale, fold in. And with a flat back, inhale, come all the way back up. So you're already instituting that half lift shape even as you lift. Exhale, arms down. Inhale, last one, arms up, toes up, glutes engaged in this pose. As you exhale, then transfer the action from the glutes to the quads while folding forward. Yes. Inhale, lengthen. Lengthen long, don't lengthen short. Exhale, plant your palms, step back. When you come down to your low plank, really exhaust the entire exhale, which will give your inhale an extra boost of energy, an extra boost of like reflexive intake. Once you get back to downward dog, set up your hands again. And since we're going to work a little bit more on extension today and back bending, we're going to work on the kind of back bending that requires our arms to be in this position, but maybe even a little bit further, right? Which is just classically called shoulder flexion. And to get more space in our shoulder flexion mechanism, it's very useful in downward dog to start to set the hands up a little bit closer to each other. And eventually it could come to a point where your thumb tips touch, but you still keep sort of pounding the effort out from the arms. So it's as if you're lifting the top of the head further from the ground with your arms flexion. On the next inhale, lift your heels up. Exhale, bend the knees, walk, step, or hop forward. And then inhale, lift your toes, extend your chest forward, nice brilliant half lift. Exhale, fold down. And then inhale, come all the way back up with your chest really just leading the way. And at the very top of the inhale is when you bring your hands together. Exhale is when the arms come down. And we'll go right into our B's, so bend the knees. For Utkatasana, first 3 breaths though. And holding it here for these 3 breaths, the 2 most important points, where are they going to be found? Where are the most important principles and alignments and techniques in any posture found? The easiest answer is look to where the body's in contact with the environment. So in this case, that means the heels, heavy heels, and from there, squeezing the thighs. So essentially the foundation. On the next exhale, straighten your legs while folding forward at the same time. Good. Inhale, lengthen. Really promote the lengthening of your chest and spine. Exhale, keep that length in the spine. Step back. And as you lower to chaturanga, Be no less scrupulous about how deep that is in the exhale. Coming out of upward dog, as you come back to downward dog, step your right foot forward and see if you can just kind of touch your knee to your nose first before the foot actually steps through. And it's a great way to train and include the core into all of our standing poses. And then keeping the high lunge semblance in your legs, come on up, lift your torso. You can start with the hands on the hips. If you take a longer stance, the limit is going to be front thigh parallel to the floor and the back foot vertical. But that's the limit. So if that limit seems to encroach on the well-being of your low back, then of course you can shorten it or just not bend your front knee as much. When you're ready, lift your arms up. However, there is just no way to overstate how critical it is to engage your left glute in the service of lengthening your spine, and even more in the service of back bending. You know, your glutes are one of the biggest players in effective back bending, which high lunge is one. Now, you're going to turn open to warrior two from here. I'm going to have some variations to this sun salutation. Steer your front knee to the right. And as far as your back heel goes, get a little bit more edging, a little bit more contact from the inner edge of your back heel. Okay, and then exhale, reach forward into side angle pose, Parsvrkonasana, which is basically like warrior two layered on with a triangle pose, upper body. So in this case, now try to get more contact with the outer heel edge to the floor. If you need to bring your elbow to your front thigh, of course, do that for yourself. You're going to take one more breath. As you exhale, bring your left hand down, lift your left heel up so you're back in high lunge, and then lift your right arm, and we'll just finish off this side of the sun salute with a nice twist. Some people call it simple twist. Some people call it other stuff. But the twist is easy enough and safe enough that it really does deserve to be one of our highlights of twisting when it comes to safety. On the next exhale, bring your right arm down, step your right leg back, and then lower to your low plank. Make sure you time that with your exhale perfectly. And when you come back to downward dog, step your left foot forward and see if you can get your knee close to the forehead or nose before the foot steps through. Set up your legs, set up your landing gear, and then come on up. Having the hands on the hips, engage your right glute, bend your front knee, make sure your front thigh is parallel to the mat. Okay, and then when you're ready, arms up. Okay, now if you have enough fluency in a high lunge to keep your right glute together, to keep your front knee bent deep, then you can add an extra complexity component by lifting your front toes, which is really going to start to challenge your balance system. It keeps you immersed in your body a lot better than just not feeling into the feet. Slowly pivot to warrior two. Steer your front knee firmly over to the left and start to really promote how deep your inner back heel edge contacts. Even go so far, and I mean this, by lifting as to lift the outer blade of your back foot. So all you can really feel is the inner edge. But with that, don't let your toes relax. Lift the toes so the inherent structure and quality of your foot and your ankle bones remains intact. Next exhale, go into side angle position. Still keeping that toe lift energy within the feet. Now press more of the outer edge of your back foot down. And if that means you need to shorten your stance a bit, not a problem. And the reason that we want to switch how we relate to the back foot and ankle from warrior two to side angle is because of what's needed in the pose. On the next exhale, bring your right hand to the mat, lift your right heel up, and then lift your left arm up for this twist, just 5 breaths. Now turn your head when you lift your arm up, and if you can get your nose to slowly start to kind of balance, come into the same trajectory of depth as where your left arm is, then you're going to start to really uncover and unravel any other neck tensions, which usually comes in the form of twisting restrictions. On the next inhale, bring your left arm down, step your left leg back. Take a nice slow descent to your chaturanga. And then when you come back to downward dog, relax your neck, drop your head. It's been a good long sun salutation of a bunch of movement. Now you get some more or less stillness. And the funny thing is about this word stillness when it's used to describe asana practice, it's a very surface description. It's a very superficial description. And it doesn't really take into account the fact that when we're even still in a pose, it's very few things that are still, right? Most of the body is still actually moving. The fact that your breath has to be constantly moving, the fact that your blood is circulating, the fact that you have to constantly communicate to your muscles to stay firm and engaged. Next inhale, lift the heels up. Exhale, bend the knees, walk or step forward. And then inhale, lengthen halfway, feet together for this one. Exhale, fold in. Keep your sitting bones lifting high. And as soon as you detect the first inhale, bend the knees, start to set up Utkatasana. We started with 3 breaths, so let's finish it with 3 breaths. And again, 2 points. Very heavy on the heels and very, very squeezy, very firm with your thighs. So that's just simple hip and leg adduction. One more breath in. And exhale, straighten your legs, arms down. There we go. Bless you. Now, second set. Bend your knees. Inhale. Just 1 breath for this one. Exhale, straighten your legs while folding. Keep the toes fanned. Inhale, really long chest, torso, spine. Exhale, plant your palms, step back. And as you go down to your low plank, watch the depth of your exhale because it's going to determine the depth of your inhale. Coming out of upward dog, step your right foot forward. See if you can get your knee to just tap your nose first. And once you've got yourself set up there, then come up to high lunge again, as we do. Good. So now you're going to straighten your front leg and then exhale, fold forward. Keep your left hand on the ground, lift your right arm up. Good. Stay there for about 3 breaths. Keep your front toes lifted. And without looking at your front foot, can you tell which part of your foot you tend to favor a little bit more? And most of us tend to favor the outer blade of the foot, so start to share some of that attention with the inner edge. Then bend your front knee, keep the twist. Now keep the twist, keep the front knee bent, and see if you can elevate your body back up so now your chest is turning to the right from an upright standpoint. Still keep the front toes lifted, keep your back leg strong, not leg. Engage your left glute. 1 more breath in. And then exhale, yes, windmill twist your arms down, step the right leg back. Carefully lower down to your low plank and then proceed on forward and through. As you get back to downward dog, stepping your left foot forward with a little quick stop over with the knee on the head. And then you got your high lunge game on. We can't really look technically, visually at our feet, especially the front foot too much. So start to invest in the feelings that are coming up from the floor and making contact with the soles of your foot. You're going to inhale, straighten your front leg, exhale, fold down over it. You keep the back heel lifted. So as far as the back leg goes, nothing has changed from our first high lunge. And keeping the back heel lifted, see if you can get your forehead not just to the knee, but further past the knee in the direction of the ankle, right? As if you want to plant your head on the top of your foot eventually. From there, place your hands more underneath your shoulders. Lift your left arm up for a twist. So it's kind of a modified twisting triangle. Keep the back leg as is, bend the front knee. Keep both legs as is. Keep the torso twist as is. Just lift up on the inhale. Your right glute is going to be one of the main points of action that help you elevate. Good. Keep the front toes up. See if you can lean a little bit more towards the back of the room. You're going to have 1 more inhale. And then exhale, windmill twist your arms down as you step your left leg back. Remember, your exhale will always determine the gravity and sophistication of your inhale. So when you get back to dog pose, again, relax your neck, drop your head. And I know that it can be exhausting to always keep the toes up in downward dog, but it's important to know that part of that exhaustion, if not most of it, comes from the fact that those parts of our body, our anatomy, are just not trained to stay active for that long. So in a way, there's a little bit of what you can kind of, I guess, call like a sedentary nature in those muscles that we just want to be able to rehabilitate. And the only way to rehabilitate them, kind of resurrect them, is just action. Demands, basically. Next inhale, lift the heels up. Exhale, bend your knees, walk, step, or hop. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold. At the very first sign of your inhale, bend the knees. Heavy heels, squeeze your thighs like you're crushing a walnut between your legs. And then as you exhale, stand up straight, arms down. Good. Separate your feet hips width. Place your hands on the hips. Inhale, lift your chest. Exhale, fold forward. There you go. And then once you're down, you know what? You can have 2 or 3 options. Either keep your hands on the hips as is, or grab your big toes, or grab from behind your ankles. And so Michelle's going to show all 3. So she already showed the hands on the hips, but we all know the toe grab. So when you grab your big toes, it's really the index and middle fingers that you're grabbing, palms facing in, and bending the elbows. Make sure you point the elbows straight back behind you, not out to the sides as it's sometimes taught. And the last point is you grab the back basically of your Achilles tendon. So your thumbs are going to be on the outside of the legs pointing down to the floor. And the way that you want to be able to pull on your legs, that isn't so much you're pulling your face towards your shins, but it's more just you're pulling yourself down. So there should be a stronger element of directing your head to the floor than just directing your head to your legs. And what that's going to always carry along with it is this instruction, command of lengthening the spine. Because once we get space in the spine, and for any joint in that matter, then that joint can actually move a lot more freely and unrestrictedly. We'll take one more breath here. Good, and then release the feet or hands from wherever they are. Place your hands on the mat, step back to your vinyasa, and then we'll meet up in downward dog and see where to go from there. Okay, so next place is going to step your right foot forward, but get your knee to your forehead first. And then once the foot steps through, set yourself immediately into triangle pose. So you straighten the front leg, pivot the back heel down, and either your right hand is on the mat, behind the leg, on a block as well, or hand on the shin. Either one works. Just make sure that you're actually supporting the weight of your torso with the strength of your right arm, which will itself unburden a part of your core musculature, which will allow more twisting. Because triangle does actually have an element of twist that usually isn't described or giving much outline. So staying right with this exact torso position, place your left hand on the hip. And so what I mean by this is continue to keep your abdomen and your chest facing out to the left. We're going to step forward into balancing half moon, Ardha Chandrasana. And it's easy to rotate towards the ground and step into it, but you want to try to do that as little as possible. Right hand stays about a foot, foot and a half, maybe 2 for the taller folks, forward of the right heel, and just slightly out to the side. Now with your right leg, you can lift it up as high as you want because that's just simple hip abduction. Just make sure that we're not also conflating that with external rotation. So toes should always remain horizontal even as the leg lifts. And we'll add one more element here. Bend your top knee. Keep your thigh in line with the torso, and then reach your left hand back and grab your left ankle. If you look down, if you offset your right hand to the right a little bit, so the foot and the hand aren't totally on the same exact narrow track, it'll give you better balance. It'll actually give you more room to extend. So for the last 5 breaths, see how well you can kick this left leg back behind you and allow your abdomen and torso to start to kind of bow out as we now start our extension protocol. Last breath out. Release the left leg. Keep your chest in the same position, same orientation as you step your left leg back to triangle pose again. Lovely. Now, next inhale, you're going to bring your left hand down, lift your back heel up, and then lower your back knee for a low lunge. And of course, if you need some kind of pad for your left knee, then this might be a good time to find one. Okay, front foot, heel and toe your right foot off to the right, so it's kind of more towards the right corner of the mat. Just make sure the toes and the thigh, and this is more of a hip description, the toes and the thigh are always in the same orientation. So if it's 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, thigh and the toe should be in the same angle. Right hand on the inner right thigh. And initially, just push your right thigh away and allow your left thigh actually to just kind of sway down towards the floor. With your left hand that's on the ground, push away from the mat so you're not just only leaning on it, you're really pushing away from the mat as if you're using that to send your chest up a little bit more. So yeah, with your right hand, you're just pushing your right leg away, which is going to help you actually get a little bit, extra input on the twisting capacity. Okay, so now that this twist has been carried as far as it is possible for this pose, release your right hand, bend the back knee and lift the back foot, and then see if you can grab your back foot. Initially, grab your foot from the outside and then start to pull it in. So it's just like when we do bow pose, Dhanurasana on the floor. And keeping yourself on the hand at first, bring your heel as close as you can to your butt. And what's totally permissible is if you lift your left butt, you lift your glutes to meet the heel halfway or more. And then when you get that contact, come back into the lunge again. So start to, again, let your hips come forward towards the ground. Keep in the contact between your heel and your glute. Keep your chest open. Keep twisting to the left. Right. And again, keep bending the back knee. So carry that lunge. Yes. And we get to that place of about a level 7, maybe 8 at most in our total intensity capacity, because it takes a little bit more time to unglue some muscles than other muscles, the hip flexin region being one of the ones that take a little more time. Only because due to its history, not because of anything implicit in those muscles. Okay, now release the foot and then come back to either high plank and go through your vinyasa or come straight back to downward dog. All right, and then we're going to step the left foot forward and go right into triangle pose. So pivot your back heel down, straighten your front knee. Like before, keep your left hand on the ground on the outside of your leg, but look down at your bottom hand, you guys, and if it's not already the case, make sure that your bottom fingertips are facing in the same direction as your front toes. And press off of your left hand so that you're using it to start to really ascend the quality of your chest lift. Okay, so you notice now the position of the torso. Keep that exactly as is without changing much at all. Right hand goes on the right hip, and you're going to step forward into your Ardha Chandrasana balancing half moon again. The distance between the bottom hand and the bottom foot should resemble the distance between your hip and your armpit, basically. Remember, you don't have to keep your hand on the same line as your foot. Keep it slightly to the left of it, to the outside of it. You lift your right leg up, lift the whole leg as high as you like, just make sure the toes stay horizontal, which is to say the rotation of the hip stays neutral. And then begin to bend your top knee, reach the foot back behind you, use your right hand to grab the ankle. And you see what Michelle just did. She just brought her left hand further out to the left. So that's completely permissible because it'll allow you to lean into the left arm as you make it a concerted effort to kick this right leg back a little further, because you start to create more of a bowing back bend shape, which needs extra foundation to support. So hold out about 3 more breaths. Find where your right glute is and find how active exactly it is. And try to use that to encourage more of that leg kicking. Keep the chest as is, let go of the foot, and then see if you can quietly step back to triangle pose again. Okay, and then right hand comes down, right heel lifts, and right knee comes down to the mat. And we're coming back to our quadriceps psoas lunge. Heel and toe your left foot to the left side of the mat. Both arms go to the inside of your front leg. Right hand stays down, left hand on the inner thigh. So initially, if you imagine your left leg was a wall, if you were pushing off a wall this way, it would help you rotate because you're getting your left chest to be more distant from that plane that the leg is on, which is exactly what would happen, or what is happening in this twist. Push off the ground with your right arm so that gets its input into this whole project again of twisting and rotating the head and chest up. How well you can bring your right thigh to the ground depends in a very big way on your ability to engage the right butt. Because your glutes, try to remember this statement, your glutes are the functional antagonist to your hip flexor tension, your hip flexor strength or restriction. And then staying with the entire body, with all of these new parameters now intact, bend your back knee, lift your back foot, grab the outside of the ankle, and then start to pull your heel towards your butt, and at the same time lift your butt towards your heel. And you can lift your butt as high as you like just to get that contact. And then once you get the contact, then make it a more conservative effort as you start to come back down. So you're not just in a rush to get your thigh as close to the ground as it was just now before you grab the foot. And you got to work with this side of your musculature because it does take a while to just build up. About 3 more breaths. As you pull your heel towards your right glute, push back with your toes. So the action that your toes are implementing is the same stuff that you were doing when you were standing, just simply lifting them. Last breath out. Good. Release the right foot, step your left hand down, bring your left leg back, and then take your vinyasa here, unless you're just coming straight back to downward dog, which really no reason to unless something actually hurts because it's midday, it's Friday, and one way that it has been discovered that the body really works well is if we need energy, the best way to get it isn't coffee in the middle of the day. It isn't food necessarily. It's not going to be sugar or Red Bull. It really is moving energy. It really is putting a nice hit into your metabolic system by moving your muscles, activating your physiology, which then returns your investment with energy. Okay. Come down to child's pose. And you can keep your hands either out in front of you or back behind you as you like. Okay. So now we're going to start to set up for a little bit more extension work here for the rest of our class. So roll up, and I'm going to show you a couple things and then we'll get set up. So what we want is to be able to have our shins against the wall. So just find, like whatever the width of your body is, 16, 18 inches of just that much wall space. And you can even have something, like above 3 feet on that wall. Just make sure the bottom 3 feet is just all empty wall space. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to place a chair in front of the wall here because there's a window on the other side. So that our feet don't go out the window, we're going to use the chair instead. If you have a yoga chair or just a folding chair like this, you can also do that. And I'm going to place a sticky mat on top. That way the blanket doesn't slide. I'm going to place a blanket on top of that. Okay, so we're going to start to work into what's called Ekapada Supta Virasana. So Michelle is going to kneel down facing away from the chair. So whenever you see her feet doing whatever to the chair, you're not using a chair, just do the same thing on the wall. So she's going to bring her hands to the mat, and then she's going to place her right foot right on the edge of the chair. If you're using a wall, the right foot just goes straight up on the wall, and then bring your right knee back until your shin is flush against the wall or your knee is right directly below the right ankle. When you get that, you're going to walk your hands in and step your left foot forward. So this is the pose. Keep your hands down for this one. So this is where we are right now. So get yourself set up, and then we'll go forward into this together. Now, if you're already set up, use your front leg by pushing forward away from the mat to press your right butt towards your right heel. So we're really just kind of recapitulating the previous quadricep psoas lunge stretch. Now, if you can get your butt and your heel to make contact, the next point is see if you can get your butt towards the wall or towards the chair if you're using one. So that means you take your butt just to the inside of the heel, just a little bit, and continuing using your left leg, keep pressing your glute towards that surface behind you. Do you need a pad? So that's just the first part. And if you've done this before, then you know the second part feels a little bit different than just double the amount of the first part. First, crawl your left foot forward using the toes. Okay, go kind of further forward, and then start to take your butt away from the right heel. Instead of pushing with the front foot, now it's more of a pulling your mat backwards. And this begins to dive your right thigh closer to the ground, which is exactly what we need. And there might come a stopping point that you really notice a lot of tension right here, right on the front of your right hip. So when that stopping point comes, close your eyes. You can even drop the head, keep your hands on the mat. And it is optional if you want to keep your left arm to the inside of the front leg. If it's a little bit too much to straddle the front leg with the arms, that's totally okay. But when you close your eyes, what you can start to notice, which is funny, it's usually what happens in other postures that we start to really approach that intensity line, is we get into an intense part of the pose, part of the muscle, and then as soon as it lets us know that, wow, like that's an intense sensation, then we start to back off. And we back off oftentimes unconsciously, even without realizing it. Because what'll happen is emotionally it feels so heavy and like so much that we start to resist the sensations of this muscle emotionally. And then if we resist it emotionally, it's kind of like we're keeping it at arm's distance, then there is no way to reconfigure it into what we're trying to do in the posture, which is evolve this part of your musculoskeletal system. That's probably been long enough. So to come out, bring your left leg down and back first, and then we'll switch legs. So left shin goes on the wall or on the chair. Make sure that if you're by a wall, that you have a blanket underneath your left knee or a towel, just something soft. If you have another mat, you can put a mat underneath your left knee. First, press your butt towards your heel by pushing away with the front leg. And as you push your butt towards the heel, you notice that it makes contact and it really doesn't cause too much tension. Then you start to press your butt just to the inside of the heel, but towards the wall more. And depending on what you've been doing with your legs recently, this may feel a little bit more intense on the quads than what you're used to. Okay, we'll take one more breath and then we'll go forward. Now start to lunge forward, adjust your right foot way out beyond the body, and then pull yourself forward away from the chair with the front leg so that your left thigh starts to drop down. And as your left thigh descends, just think of it this way. The more your left thigh descends, the more space you're creating in your psoas. Relax your neck, drop the head. Keep the toes of the left foot pressing against the wall, and if the toes are on the chair, just keep reaching the toenails towards the seat. Left glute stays strong, both arms on the inside of the front leg. And usually, this is back to that intensity description. If you find yourself in an intense position, your body adapts. So if you don't back away from it, you just sit with it for 5 breaths, it's not going to be as intense at the end of those 5 breaths as it was in the beginning. And that intensity, the drop in that intensity, signifies something. It signifies that your body is assimilating the information of the pose. So as it assimilates and adapts, then you take it a little bit further. So that incremental adjustment to stay right where that maximum intensity is present in your muscles. That's really this edge. And so when we talk about the edge, it's not like a firm, hard line that's drawn in the sand. It's a fluid edge. It's an edge that moves even within the time of one posture. So it takes a careful eye and a lot of patience to watch the fluidity of that edge. Let's come on out. You're going to step your right leg back down first, left leg down next. We'll do another one. So right leg on the chair or on the wall. And then we'll pick up on where we left off already. So when you step your left foot forward, you're going to come up first. So before you come down, come up, lift yourself up vertically. Good. So now, if you're against the wall, the only thing you can do is just push against your front thigh here with your hands. So that'll keep your torso away from the front leg. But if you are on a chair, you can reach your hands back and you can hold right underneath the seat. If you're using one of these folding chairs, you can grab that nice metal edge of the seat, which will take your shoulders back and will keep your chest a little bit more expanded. So wherever your arms are, start to now lunge forward and start to reach your right thigh down. If you go far enough with this, as the case is in this pose, you can adjust your left foot forward continuously to make space for more lunging. There we go. And if you get far enough with this, then you know that holding onto the chair is just going to hold you back in a way. So then you can keep your hands on your front thigh once you've broken through that amount of flexibility. Now everybody, lift your lower belly up. Keep your right glute just really hard clenched. And then as you continuously dive your thigh to the floor, start to push away from your front leg and reach your chest and reach your head more towards the back foot and the back leg. There we go. Now, if you like, keep your left hand on the leg, reach your right arm up and back behind you, and use your right arm to dictate the depth of your back bend. Right, so no matter how far you can bend back, nice. Your right hand might not touch the foot. Still keep your right arm reaching far back. Now, if you want to really challenge yourself, take your left hand off the thigh as well and reach both arms back. And one option is you can interlace your fingers behind your head and push your head and your hands back that way. For those of you that are lucky enough to get the foot, once you've gotten the foot, see if you can keep forward lunging back towards the floor. Good. And then inhale, come on out. Hands down, and we'll switch sides. When you put your psoas at this kind of length and add a back bend to it, it really is a back bend that could shock some good energy into the system. Just again, make sure you don't overwhelm yourself. So when you get your left leg on the wall or the chair, your right foot forward, lift your torso up vertically. Again, either hands on the front thigh. If you're on the chair, you can reach back, hold underneath the edge of the seat. And then go forward. So now it's all about getting the back thigh closer and closer to the ground. Now, if you've gone far enough in this lunge that holding on to the chair feels like it holds you back, bring your hands back to your front thigh. Lift your low belly. And so those low belly muscles, they're actually better recruited if you think of your pelvic floor muscles, all of your number 1 and number 2 muscles. Just kind of get a grip on them, and it'll help that keep that lower abdominal band, the transversus abdominis band, better intact, which supports your pelvis and therefore your back. Now, reach your left arm back behind you, keep your right hand on the leg. And think of it this way. Don't lead with your spine, lead with your left arm. So just simply think, I'm going to use my hand in this posterior movement to start to open up my chest. And so if your hand reaches back further, then your chest will reach back further. And eventually, you can bend your elbow, try to reach for the foot. And then those of you that are willing to try, lift both arms. Reach your hands back as far as they will go first, and then bend the elbows. Either keep your hands behind the head and push your head into the hands, and continue doing that until you can get your hands to your foot. And once you get a good hold, light up your right glute and go forward with the pelvis. Lift your low belly. 2 more breaths. And then inhale, slowly come on out. Bring your right leg down first, left leg down next. Lay down on your backs. Okay, start with your knees bent. So just to keep the energetics and dynamics of our back bend continuous, lift your hips up, starting with bridge. And then place your hands next to your ears. So even if you can't do full back bend like this, you could still do a couple of steps, even if this is the step that you need to stop at. Next step is lift your heels. Step after that, which is what? Our third step, come to the crown of the head. And just stay on the crown of the head. Look at your hands. Make sure your fingers in this pose are always facing away from center, and your elbows are narrower, or as narrow as the hands and shoulders. Keeping the heels up. With your inhale, if you're willing to, come all the way up. Once you're up, you can just kind of look down, take a gander at your hands to make sure they're still in this position. Okay? And if they are, then relax your neck, let your head hang free, and use the power of your legs, and this is whether your heels are lifted or not, use the power of your legs to kick your chest that way. So as you're boosting your chest and your sternum out of the body, it's really all propagated from the legs. And this allows your glutes to start to make this neural connection to the relationship of a back bend, which already should be the case. 1 more breath. And then exhale, come down carefully. Make sure that your knees are together afterwards, feet are apart, close your eyes. You can rest your hands at the sides. You can put your hands on your abdomen or on your chest, or one on each. But close your eyes and try not to move at all. Just capture the essence of that back bend. And notice, how does it feel different from, say, like the very typical sensations and after effects of pigeon pose or forward bending? And knowing these differences, these different excitations on the nervous system, really helps us get a way better handle on how we can use movement to affect our overall state. Okay, let's try it. Number 2. This will be the last one. So again, start with a bridge, lift your hips up first. That's one point. Second point, get the heels up, and that'll help to unburden your hips and your low back. Third point, with your hands next to your ears, come to the crown of your head. Number 3, make sure your hands are in the right position, heels stay lifted. Point 4, on an inhale, get all the way up. Perfect. Still keep your fingertips gripped into the mat. If you'd like to lower your heels down, try to keep more contact with these inner edges of the heels, and then press your chest towards the wall that it's facing. And use your legs to do that, because your arms have nothing to say about it. It's all just an enterprise of leg intelligence, hip intelligence. Maybe close your eyes for the last 2 breaths to try to see if you can capture this essence of a back bend even within the back bend. And then come down quietly, maybe even come down keeping your eyes closed throughout the whole way. Yeah. And then rest and stay still in between. It's like anything else. The way that we get to know something better is we spend more time with something or someone. So spending more time with doing a back bend and right away assimilating, digesting its effects builds up this embodied wisdom of what it does. And then when it's actually very necessary to help us through certain points of life. Okay, so after all that good back bending work, we got to end with a pigeon. So just gently turn over to your side. Let's start with the left leg. You're going to bring your left leg forward into your pigeon. And this is where you might need a block. If you don't want to use a block, you can use a towel or a blanket. But as you bring your left leg forward, left. And we're starting with the left leg just to be less orthodox today, but also so you can see what's happening in the hip first. So the block you'll use, if it's not easy to get your left thigh down, just to take up some space between your left thigh and the floor. And this will help you get this whole hip squaring tactic a little bit better aligned. But it's not actually that necessary. So if you don't want to use a block, or you don't need to use a block, still make sure that your left thigh is landing firmly on the floor. It's not just the left thigh, it really is most of your body's weight, because your torso and your hips, your pelvis is going to be leaning to the left thigh. You want to feel the impact of your body weight on that leg. And as long as you don't ever deviate from that, you can start to square your hips, which in this case means rotating the right hip down slowly, as long as that left thigh doesn't lift. And for an added little advantage on that, here's a technique that might be helpful. So you can take your left hand out to the left with your fingers facing away from you, and by pushing away from the ground, you can use your left arm to help influence how your pelvis tries to square. Again, just make sure that that left arm input doesn't now take the weight of your body off the left thigh, okay? Keep your left toes engaged. And again, if your hand there doesn't do anything for you, that's fine. But I find that for most people that have some restriction in this part of the hip, like the glute or the deep 6 rotators in the hip, then that's where the hand is the most helpful. Nevertheless, however deep you are, however flexible you are, you have to keep your front foot engaged, even if it's as minimal as just keeping the toes pulled back towards the knee. But I'm never going to be a fan of like what's the most minimal, because minimal starts to kind of signify mediocrity, and that's always a dangerous trap, although it is a tempting trap to get into. Don't be minimalist about it. If you could pull your toes back, see if you can also start adding more pressure with the outer blade of your front foot, the outer edge of your front foot. You do that just enough, you'll actually be able to take the outer ankle off the ground. Yes. And every once in a while, you can continue reaching your right leg back a little bit further, maybe continue extending your torso forward a little bit longer. Good. We'll take this one last exhale. Too bad this is not a 2-hour class. Okay, come on out, nice and slow. Change sides gently. You don't have to get into downward dog. Now we're just really starting to turn things down and inward, so we're a little bit less exteriorized in the body. We're preparing ourselves for our Shavasana. And so you can see that Michelle's front shin is parallel to the top of the mat. Not many of us can get there. So if that's not the case for you, you can close the knee joint a little bit more. The most important thing I just want to reemphasize that you get that outer thigh down, whether it's on a block or on the mat, and then fold back in. As you saw before, you can use your right hand on this side to push away from the ground and to influence. So when your right leg is going forward, the rotation is going to be more to the right. So you're kind of trying to bring your left hip down, which means you're rotating rightward. So if we had more time, and just a little food for thought and extra tip for your own practice, if you wanted to really put extra accent on this pose, you would do a twist on top of this pigeon. And it wouldn't be a twist to the left, like we sometimes see with the elbow in the sole of the front foot. It would be the attempt to get your left elbow on the outside of your front knee. Reinstate those incredibly important foot actions in the right foot. Keep the outer blade of the foot grooving down so that the outer ankle doesn't collapse. Couple more breaths. And this should usher in pretty satisfying Shavasana. So when you're done with this current exhale, you can just come back, turn over onto your back, make yourself comfortable, get something to put your head on, and also get something that you can put over your eyes, like a little towel. If you have one of those lovely eye pillows, they really do help. Your head doesn't have to be lifted high, it just has to be lifted enough so that you can feel that the back of your neck has a little bit, the back of your neck has a little bit more length than the front of the neck. And the way that Mr. Iyengar always taught Shavasana, the way that his children, Gita and Prashant, taught it, was that there's really the two most critical elements after you get everything aligned was the presence of warmth and the absence of light. If you need to cover yourself up, if you tend to get cold easily, you want to cover up your feet or your hands, that is encouraged. And once you get that, then you can put something right over your eyes so that you start to eliminate the way that the light influences the visual system. And that's just how your body knows, or how to trick your body in a way, to thinking that it's nighttime. Because the human body really evolved to sleep and rest fully when all natural light is gone. So if we need to rest in the middle of the day, we're basically recreating nighttime. So that's our Shavasana. Take as much time as you need here. Thank you for coming to practice. Thank you for staying in practice. And I wish you a nice, strong, and powerful end of your day. Much love.